Welcome to the Calder Farmstead.
Now the Ice Hawks back out to center in transition. Carlson with Quenneville 2-on-1. Right when Carlson comes, Quenneville scores!
Here's a chance for Perry. He scores! Off the face-off! Up it's Eminger. Pulled back to Werenski. Has it. Shoots one. Bounces off a man. 5 seconds left. Werenski. Another jam on the shot. Turning and firing. They go! They score! They score! Now they catch each other. They both go right over the top. Matching rights to one another. McDermott gets the helmet off of Cassie.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out right side with Bear. Looks like cutting to the net. Bear will score!
And here are your hosts, Cece and Sean.
Well, hello and greetings from the mile-high city of Denver, Colorado.
And Concord, New Hampshire.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, Episode 3, the Calder Farmstead Podcast for January 26th, Tuesday, 2021. If you were hoping for a podcast featuring tips on crop management, we are not going to be able to help you very much because this is an American Hockey League podcast, and my name is Cece Hockley.
And I'm Sean O'Brien.
Thank you very much for tuning in with us.
If you're new to hearing Cece and I talk about hockey, we're going to break down some AHL hockey for you. Both of us watch a lot of games. We're going to talk about what we see when we watch the games, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you might want to head over to our podcast feed or channel, wherever you're listening to us from, be that YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, etc. Check out episode 0. It's a primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms, you'll be able to listen to that and better pick up what we're putting down. I promise it isn't that nerdy or technical. It's 20 minutes long. You should go check that out. But that being said, let's get to business.
Let's do it. So our first episode covered a couple of teams from the Pacific Division. Second episode, a couple of teams from the Central Division. So we're going to head further east. We're going to cover a couple teams from the North Division, the Syracuse Crunch and the Utica Comets. Both of these teams have 2 NHL affiliates. So double the affiliations, double your fun. That'll be the name of this episode. We did kind of allude to it with the Chicago Wolves last episode, but since we're covering 2 teams that have 2 NHL affiliates, it's only appropriate to have an episode with that name and that title. So let's get started. We'll talk about the Syracuse Crunch first and foremost. Their head coach is Benoit Gruel. He is entering his 5th season as the bench boss of the Crunch. Syracuse 2019-20 regular season record was 30-23-4-5. That was good enough for 5th place in the North Division last season before it was abruptly cut short in March of 2020. Their affiliation, as I mentioned, they've got 2 NHL affiliates in 2021, and that is the Tampa Bay Lightning, their normal affiliate, and the Florida Panthers, who were supposed to be with the Charlotte Checkers this season, but Charlotte decided to opt out. So, therefore, Tampa Bay and Florida are sending their prospects to Syracuse, and they also have the Orlando Solar Bears in the ECHL as their AA affiliate for 2021. They've got 32 games scheduled, but only 3 opponents, 12 games for Rochester, 14 games for Utica, and 6 games against the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins.
Well, let's get right to the forwards here. First, for the record, there are an insane number of players on this training camp roster. At last look, there were 35 on the roster. So 15 guys are going to be cut. That seems like too many. Double your affiliation, double your training camp, I guess. Let's talk forwards. Alex Barré-Boulet continues to get log jammed out of Tampa, which is good for Crunch fans as that kid's a star. He finished in the 95th percentile of forwards last season, according to the model. He joins Ross Colton and Taylor Radish as familiar faces atop the depth chart for the Crunch. Colton took a big step forward last season and established himself as a dangerous playmaker. I'd like to see a little more from Radish this season, as he didn't follow Colton with that big step forward in production, but he's still very capable of it and is just 22. Still, he has great puck skills, but needs to add a gear to his skating. Scott Wilson is a great add for them, as he has veteran experience and provides that scoring support. Boo Nieves does the same thing for them, and it turns out if they aren't in the playoffs, Boo Nieves will be used to that from his time in Hartford. Always be prepared. And it's not shocking with a camp roster of the size of a small town. There are a lot of young guys on the docket. Jack the Giant Finley has a lot of under the radar talent. He's good at big guy things like winning battles, creating havoc in front of the net, but also has low-key good puck skills. He's someone who could blossom this season. And like his fellow Giant, Sarah Noel, he's a little less under the radar, but as you're a second-round pick, that's kind of just what happens. You don't get to be anonymous. He's also a big physical presence and has smooth puck skills that also kind of keep him from going on the radar, rather. Grigory Denishenko's physical game leaves you wanting a little bit more, but the rest of his game does not. Don't let his numbers from Russia fool you. The Panthers' top prospect and 15th overall pick in 2018 can absolutely ball. He has a stellar toolkit that's just dripping with potential. He needs to add some muscle to his frame, but he's young and he's likely a future top 6 NHLer. I think Gabe Fortier sticks well in the third line role as kind of a PK defensive forward. He has great speed, okay-ish puck skills, and I wouldn't be expecting a lot of offense from him, but he's really smart in his own zone. Gage Gonsalves has the tools to be a solid playmaker, but is still developing. I don't know if he gets the ice time because, as you can see, there's quite a logjam ahead of him, but I think he has potential to become a really good AHL player. But this is a deep group with a solid first line anchored by Barry Boulet. On paper, they're very dangerous and possess the potential to be the best forward group in the AHL this season. I don't know if they get there because Ontario's really good. Chicago's really good. We'll talk about Utica later, but they have the potential. They have the pieces to be the best forward group in the AHL.
Yeah, they definitely have, they're just spoiled for riches, I think is what I said in my AHL preview that I did for Full Press Hockey. But again, chemistry is a thing. So you can't just stack your team with a whole bunch of good forwards, good players rather, and just have them be successful. But with that all said, let's go to the blue line. We'll talk about defense. And first and foremost, Chase Prisky is likely to be the number one defenseman for this team, and he certainly earned that. The model rated him as a first pairing defenseman last season for cause. He's got a good offensive skill set paired with a high hockey IQ, and that enables him to make smart plays, obviously. His skating worries me a little bit, but it's not that bad. It's not terrible. So there you go. Have that. He joins the captain, Luke Witkowski, who returns to the only AHL team he's ever known there in Syracuse. Witkowski's a stay-at-home defenseman, so I assume quarantine will be easy for him. Sean Day also managed to escape Hartford, but he's more of a bottom pair guy. It's a similar tale for Jake Massey. Brady Keeper can move the puck and is physical, but 108 penalty minutes aren't going to help the team. He needs to be more disciplined than that. As for the fresh new faces in this mosh pit of a roster, Alex Green is interesting. He's a smart playmaker who often finds good zone exits instead of glass and out, but I don't know how much his offense will translate. John Ludwig checks a lot of boxes as a defenseman, but skating is not one of them. Still, he should be a solid second pairing guy at minimum in his rookie campaign. Max Gilden has a big shot and moves the puck well, but we'll see how his skating holds up in rush defense. Same could be said for Alec Rauhauser, but I think he has better puck skills than Gilden does. He could easily be a sneaky top 4 guy there. So this roster is 8 pounds meat in a 5-pound bag. It's hard to know who's going to even get the opportunity to show what they have. Again, spoiled for riches, forwards, defensemen. It's just a glut of players.
But that's not true for the goalie room, though. The entire population of Syracuse for a training camp roster, but the minimum number of goalies, weird flex Syracuse, but okay. Sam Montembeault was at one time thought to be the heir apparent in Florida, but the shine seems to very much have worn off of him quickly, and there's some merit to that. He's only 24, so there's still time, but for right now, he should be a serviceable goalie to the crunch, but I don't think he's as good as the 11-game stint last season in Springfield, where he posted .421 goals saved above average per 60. Clint Windsor is the other half of the goalie room. He's got back-to-back solid years in the ECHL. So while it's always nice to see guys get a shot after performing well on the coast, I think he's got what it takes to be an AHL starter. But we'll see. He hasn't looked good in Orlando so far in 2021, but that's a small sample size for sure.
Oh, indeed. Indeed. We've talked about forwards. We've talked about defensemen. We've talked about goalies for the Crunch. Let's talk outcomes. And I'll take it first with the best case scenario. Windsor and Montembeault are a solid tandem, and the depth in front of them allows Syracuse to roll 4 lines and 3 D pairs and not depend on any one player to produce each night. They look like world beaters. They take advantage of that huge roster of theirs, and they finish with 41 points, which is a 97-point pace in a normal season of 76 games. And to balance that, worst case scenario, Sean.
Worst case scenario. Having double the affiliations also means double the call-ups. And if that ends up cutting the depth out from this team, that can definitely hurt their chances. But it shouldn't be crippling. Even if Windsor looks like an ECHL goalie and Montembeault doesn't lock it down, they should still be competitive, but goaltending matters. And theirs is not one that I'm pointing to and being like, that's definitely going to be the best tandem in the AHL. There's a good team in front of them, but worst case scenario, I think they finish with 33 points, which is a 78-point pace in normal times. That's usually not good enough for a playoff spot, but still not a terrible dumpster fire kind of season.
Sure. When you have that good of a team on the offensive and defensive side of the puck, but just not in net, yeah, you're gonna probably score a lot of goals and win a few games that way. But the most likely scenario, let's cover that. While other teams that are loaded with quality prospects, a lot of them face the likely scenario that they leave if a CHL season happens. It's all contingent on that major juniors system for sure. Most of Syracuse's depth won't be affected by that. So that means most likely they're going to be closer to a best case scenario. The model projects them for about 38 points, and I like them for 38 and not any higher because goaltending kind of concerns me a tad as well. So 38 it is. We'll stick with that. That's the most likely scenario.
So that's all we got for the Syracuse Crunch. If you give us a second here, we got some bills to pay, and we'll be back talking about the Utica forwards, or the Utica Comets and their forwards, defensemen, goalies, and outcomes.
There we go. All right. The Utica Comets are next in this double the affiliations, double the fun episode in New York here with Syracuse and Utica. So Utica Comets head coach Trent Cole is entering his 4th season with the club. 2019-20 regular season record was 34, 22, 3, and 2. That was good enough for 3rd in the North Division before the season was canceled last year. Their affiliation for 2021 are the Vancouver Canucks and St. Louis Blues, although Vancouver has kind of patched together a nice little working agreement with the Manitoba Moose, which we will get to once the Canadian AHL teams hash out their schedule and everything that they've got going on, of course. So Utica's opponents, they've got 32 games scheduled. They've only got 2 games against Binghamton, and they've only got 2 games against Providence. That was kind of an interesting point in their schedule. They have 14 games apiece with Rochester and Syracuse. 14 with Rochester, 14 with Syracuse. They are going to become very acquainted with each other in 2021. Those are ECHL opponent numbers right there. That's like Utah and Colorado and Idaho. Boy, that reminds me of covering the ECHL a few years ago. But hey, Syracuse and Rochester, 14 times apiece. That is the Utica Comets. Little introduction there. Let's talk about their forwards. Mr. Sean O'Brien.
Yeah, and those games against Syracuse are going to be absolute wars because as we just talked about, Syracuse is a very deep forward group, and spoiler, so does Utica. Double your affiliations, double your fun. In this weird twist of events, though, that 2020 has left us with, Sam Annis will still be in a green jersey this season. Just not the same green jersey he wore when he won the Sullenberger Trophy last season. He and Sven Bartucci are going to light it up this season, albeit I don't think they end up playing alongside each other. Both are better playmakers than snipers, and having two lines with top AHL forwards is almost always the smart approach. Gadjevich is a big physical presence who has a heavy shot, and I think he might pair well with Anas or someone like Hugh McGing, who's on the smaller side, but is scrappy, has blazing speed, and a nasty wrist shot. I think Will Lockwood ends up being a good PKer and slots in as a defensive specialist. He's got good defensive instincts, but lacks the puck skills to find his way on the score sheet too often. Aussie Nathan Walker brings a cup ring to the room and has been a dependable depth scorer. I think he has a good season riding shotgun with either Anas or Bartucci. Cole Lynn took a step forward last season, but still needs to add a gear to his skating. He's still a smart player with a much better shot than his goal totals would indicate. Should he find some power play time this season with Sven and Sam, I think he can score at a 25-goal pace. There are a lot of other guys that have the ability to push for middle six roles here. And because this is still a very deep roster, we're not going to touch on all of them. But the point going forward here is this is a deep group. Double your affiliations, double your scoring depth, and that's what the forward group in Utica brings.
And again, to balance the forward group, over to the defensive side of the puck and the blue liners there. So Brisebois is the name that Comets fans know for sure. But I think Scott Perunovich, took me a second, is likely to finish the season as the Comets' best defenseman. He's a Hobey Baker Award winner, which is basically the Heisman Trophy equivalent for college hockey. He's probably the Blues' most valuable defensive prospect, and his game is a fun one to watch. He's got an elite hockey IQ and makes smooth passes that utilize his ability to see moves ahead. It utilizes his ability to see moves ahead. His defensive work isn't a strength of his game, but it's not necessarily a weakness. It's just kind of middle of the road there. I do think a good potential partner is Jet Wu. Jet Wu makes his AHL debut, and his style is a mashup of traditional kind of Kevin Hatcher style of physical defense paired with some good puck movement and hockey IQ. He's not going to be featured on SportsCenter's top 10 anytime soon, but I think he's a dependable mid-pair guy to start the season. In that same style is Tyler Tucker, who is physical and mean, but has some offensive upside. His skating needs work, though, and he's not the most mobile. Mitch Reinke, too, is a solid defenseman who I think got burned by bad goaltending behind him last season. He's capable of being a top pair guy and a quarterback on the power play for sure. Outside of them, the Comets have a lot of good bottom pair defensemen that could maybe push for a middle pair role. Guys like Mitch Elliott, Stantini, Josh Tevis, etc. But Perunovich and Brisebois up top and big physical guys like Wu and Tucker, this is not going to be a fun group to play against. You would imagine that their opponents are going to have some bruises and some bumps by the end of Comets games for sure.
Next up are our resident voodoo practitioners. John Gillies comes over from Stockton, where he posted consistently good stats over 160 games. 18-19 was a little bit of a down year, but otherwise he had a solid AHL resume and had a cup of coffee in Calgary even. Gillies should get the majority of the starts here, as behind him are Jake Kiley and Evan Fitzpatrick, and, well, they do not inspire confidence in me. Both have the experience in the coast, and neither have really looked good there. Kiley was a solid starter in college at Clarkson, so maybe he pulls it together, but I wouldn't depend on that. Fitzpatrick has a handful of AHL starts where he posted slightly below average numbers. His 37 games in the ECHL were not great, Bob. Still, we have to always point out goaltending is voodoo. They could absolutely pan out and make me look silly here, but their previous body of work does not excite me. Gillies, though, should be able to hold down the fort and should keep starts from Kiley and Fitzpatrick kind of at bay should they not work out. So let's go to outcomes here. First, let's start best case scenario because we like to be positive up front. Everything goes like we outlined. The power play is the best in the league. Gillies plays a bunch more games than Kiley or Fitzgerald. The Sam and Sven goal scoring hour powers a deep offense, and Perunovich lights it up from the back end. They finish with 42 points. That's a 100-point pace in a normal season.
Anytime you can break 100 is quality. So 42 is the equivalent of that. Holy smokes. Yeah, best case scenario. And of course, me being the foil, time to go worst case scenario. Gillies gets hurt and guys really underperform. That's about the only way I can envision this Comets team going south. In that worst case scenario, they finish with 34 points. That's about 81 points in a normal season. And that's usually just shy of the playoffs.
In the most likely scenario column, I think they're the best team in this division. Sorry, Syracuse. But Gillies is the best goalie between these two otherwise very deep teams up front and on the blue line. The division is looking to be the most competitive, but I like Utica here. The model projects them for 37 points based on point shares of their roster, which is an 89-point pace. I like them a little bit more than that, so I think I'm going to put them in as a 40-point team this season, which is a 95-point pace in a normal season.
And I know that, we obviously that's one of our calling cards is that goaltending is voodoo and everything like that. But when you have a consistent, goaltender like a John Gillies, like he, like you said, 18-19 was a down year for him, but he has proven himself to be a solid acquisition and a solid, netminder at the AHL level. And quite frankly, Syracuse, yeah, they've got, Montembeault and an ECHL goaltender in Clint Windsor. And so the fact that, comparing the two, they're both going to be stacked to the gills in regards to their rosters. We've kind of said that ad nauseum this episode, but
Utica's going to be stacked to the gillies.
Well played, sir. I was like, wait, stacked to the gills? Did I just make kind of a pun? But you took it to the next step, and this is why we're co-hosts, my friend. Thank you for that. Stacked to the gillies. But yeah, no, goaltending is going to make a huge difference, especially with, players trying to gel and especially these huge rosters and the mixture of, two different NHL teams, prospects and everything like that. Yeah, it's a very astute observation that goaltending is going to be the difference. And, picking Utica over Syracuse, I don't think is that much of a stretch.
No, and I mean, I think they're going, it's not that Utica is going to steal every game this season when they play Syracuse. They're going to trade wins back and forth, but I think Utica outpaces them just a little bit. They pull, you said they play 14 times?
They play 14 times.
Jeez, that's so many games.
I know. If
they win 9 of those, if Utica wins 9 of those, I think that's a realistic outcome. Or if they win 8, it's going to be, some back and forth, but I think Utica has a slightly better team. John Gillies too doesn't strike me as someone that's going to get called up to the taxi squad. He seems like someone that St. Louis and Vancouver are going to leave him there unless, shenanigans happen. I think they're going to be content with keeping him there, which is going to help cement that position for them.
Yeah. And I think, Vancouver, obviously with their, working affiliation, quote unquote, with the Manitoba Moose now, to send prospects there and everything, obviously, that's going to, you're going to have maybe a goaltender that they can pull from there, especially, with the international border between the US and Canada not being an issue. So that kind of plays into it as well. I mean, yeah, and Gillies, St. Louis, I'm sure has, you've got, the Evan Fitzpatricks of the world as well, who's a St. Louis prospect. So, yeah, it's just kind of a cluster right now in regards to, figuring things out, figuring out the border. News broke today about the Stockton Heat playing in Calgary this season. So it's there's just a whole ton of things that are getting worked out. Yeah, we'll touch on that more once we cover Stockton, and we'll definitely comment on that. But it's definitely that pesky international border between the US and Canada is becoming more and more problematic as we get closer to the start of the AHL season come Friday, February 5th. So anyway, that's all we have for episode number 3 of the Calder Farmstead. And I'll let you take it away and start the outro, Sean.
So if you guys are enjoying the show, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, please rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it from, or if you're watching on YouTube, like the video and give us a comment of what you thought of the episode. Doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews and comments help improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at the Calder Farmstead on Instagram and Facebook. Links to all of that and more can be found in our link tree, which is linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. It's also scrolling in the bar below there.
Oh, it's actually not. I forgot to hit
scrolling in the bar below here in a matter of seconds.
Here we go. Let me cue that up. I totally forgot to do that. There we go. There's the link. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
Little technical oversight there. But hey, my name's CC Hockley. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at FPC_AHL. You can also find me doing hockey tweets at my personal Twitter account at CCHawk. That's SEESEEHAWK. Definitely check out my writing on the Full Press Coverage Network. My writing, AHL writing, NHL writing at www.fullpresshockey.com. Sean?
I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SEANOBRIEN. And I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. You can find my stats work on Tableau at bit.ly/data dump and chase, all lowercase, all one word. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at ADDysfunction, AD_DYSFUNCTION.
And that will do it for the show. We were all wrapped up, and we got 7 teams previewed and a whole lot more to go. So stick with us. Thank you for tuning in, and keep your stick on the ice.